Why measure public opinion? Like I said in part one of the public opinion lecture, you measure it so you understand how people are thinking and what they're worried about, so when you're writing legislation as a politician, you can go where they are. Going where they are means you're going to get reelected. So politicians follow polls because they want to be reelected. If the people are concerned about reforming immigration, then you want to make sure you are working on legislation that reforms immigration. If people want to see the repeal of Obamacare, you are going to make action, or you're going to carry out actions that repeal Obamacare. So that's, mainly why politicians want to make sure that they know where the polls are. The critiques of that is that our politicians have kind of become followers. Instead of taking the wishes of the people and then doing what's best, they will follow the wishes of the people, and that will dictate their actions instead of them using their intelligence and their experience and doing what's best for the country. Since they're so preoccupied with getting reelected, they're just going to make laws or do things that the people want to see them do. The problem with that is, if sometimes the people don't know what they want, and they need that experience, and that was the intention of the framers. They needed that experienced, educated person to kind of show them the right way, to show them the path. The media, if the media follows public opinion too much, they're going to spend too much time covering public opinion and less time covering the issues. So instead of educating people about the facts behind the issues, they're just going to report on people's positions. So instead of telling us the ins and outs of the Affordable Health Care Act, the media just reported on the fact that people didn't like it. And they didn't focus on what was what the act was about. They just focused on the politics of the act. Okay, collective attitude. Public opinion is a collective attitude of the citizens on a given issue or question. And it's measured, of course, by a collection of questions or polls. Some common collective attitudes or opinions of the United States people is that we distrust the government. We started to distrust the government, and I want to add this in here, with the Vietnam War. We believed that the government was doing things that were corrupt, and that they weren't being completely transparent with us, the American public. And with Watergate. Those two things in the 60s and the 70s have caused a downward spiral of the people's trust in government. And then you'll have stuff like the government shutdown that doesn't help at all. Another thing is that we lack faith that our government is serving us. And we have no efficacy. And efficacy is the belief, the belief that you can make a difference, that your opinion matters, and what you say when you contact an official, or how you vote, that's measured, and the government is doing what you want it to do. So if you don't have efficacy, then you have little faith that the government is doing, or that you can influence the government. And the lack of efficacy leads to a phenomenon called apathy, where we just don't care. Of course, you're not going to care about something that you think you can't change. That should be depicted in this chart. How much of the time do you think you can trust the government in Washington to do what's right? Just about always, most of the time, or only some of the time. And so you can see, whoa, let me erase that. I didn't know I was on the freestyle. Okay, how much of the time do you think you could trust the government? So just about always is in this dark green. So in the 1990s, we had a little bit more faith in our government. Okay, then around this time is when we went into Iraq. Anytime we go into, well, right here was 9/11. Then we go into Iraq. So anytime we go, into war, you're going to see a decline in the trust of government. But overall, um, most people, and you can see by these trends right here, most people don't trust the government. More often than not, we don't have faith in it. I am going to delete that. Okay. Um, Evolution of opinion, the 9/11 effect. After 9/11, we as a country strongly wanted to attack Afghanistan. We knew that it was an Al Qaeda attack, and we thought the best way to fight terrorism was to take down Al Qaeda in Afghanistan that was being fostered by the Taliban. So there was overwhelming support for the war in Afghanistan. And so we went into Afghanistan. Now, 3 years after being in Afghanistan, when it wasn't a successful war, we changed our minds. So you see policy starting to reflect a lack of support for the war on terror. But right after 9/11, we were all about it. Okay, then after that became sour and the American public didn't believe that we were being successful, then the attitudes changed and policy changed with it. Okay, common trends. The media reports these polls, and they constantly make us feel like these things are important. Like presidential approval rating is important, congressional approval rating is important. So that's kind of the media's fault. They make us believe it's important, so it's a self-perpetuating cycle here. Presidential approval ratings, you can see right here. Um, this is a depiction of overall how people felt about Barack Obama in 2009. So 64%, I think it was about 60% of the people liked him. About 53% of the people liked Bush during his um, presidency within the first couple months of his presidency, and then Clinton had 56%. So in the early months of a presidency, more than half the people tend to like the president. And generally, most of the people of his party really like him. That's called the honeymoon period. All right, the honeymoon period is that the first 100 days of the presidency where that president is going to experience a high approval rating, and it's at a great time to get stuff done. Like, if the president wants to pass healthcare reform, he should do it in that first couple 100 days. If he wants to change um, immigration, he should do it in that first 100 days. It's a great time to get stuff done because Congress has a hard time denying a well-liked president. Throughout his presidency, though, his approval is going to drop. Right? Approval tends to drop toward the end of the presidency. There's another phenomenon called rally around the flag. If an incident happens and the president takes care of them, so if there's a crisis and the president takes care of the crisis really well, then his approval will shoot up. But if we don't think that he's taking care of the situation well, that approval will go down. An example of rally around the flag was George Bush Jr. after 9/11. We really thought he did a heck of a job handling the aftermath of 9/11. So his public approval rating jumped. Okay, that went down because he had a poor time with handling Hurricane Katrina. So then, because he couldn't handle that crisis well, or was perceived he didn't handle that crisis well, his approval dropped. But a general trend is that all presidents' approval ratings drop toward the end of their presidency. Again, like I said, there is consistent distrust in the government. When you don't trust the government, you don't trust what they're doing for you, you don't want to pay taxes. So that becomes an issue. All right, congressional approval is always really low. Generally, people disapprove of the way Congress conducts business. Let me see if I can't get this link to go. If it's a government link, you know it's not going to work. It's not, the hyperlink's not going to work unless, okay. Hold on, I'm going to look up congressional approval real quick. Oh, iPhone 5! It's plastic. It's cheap. I'm on Real Politics. That's one of the polls that you can use. Only 14% of people like Congress right now. That should not be a surprise. Oh, gee, and The Economist has a 7% approval rating. Gallup has 19. Fox News has 13. So a majority of the people don't like Congress. Now, the government shutdown doesn't help. But you can see that the approval rating, this is a split graph. It shows you the data in two different ways. It shows you approval and disapproval rating. So your disapproval rating is in the red up here, and your approval rating is in the black. Let's see. You could see Congress, people thought Congress were doing an okay job March 13th, 2009. Obama had just gotten into office, and Democrats were in Congress then, or they had a majority in both houses. And they were getting a lot of stuff done. They were pushing through a lot of legislation because there was no gridlock, because it wasn't divided government. And then in 2010, 2011, you start to have divided government because Republicans won the House, and you're going to start to see disapproval go up and approval rating go down, because with divided government, we feel that nothing gets done, and when nothing gets accomplished, the American people don't like Congress. So, some common trends when it comes to Congress. Let me put that back there. Okay. So partisan bickering causes approval ratings to go down. We don't like gridlock, so if there is divided government, nothing gets accomplished, and that makes us feel like our government isn't doing their job. Special interest, we feel another thing that Congress, this is going back to that corporativism and class elite theory, that we believe that the government is only looking out for special interest or corporations because they give them campaign contributions, and that makes us not like them or trust them. If we're experiencing economic hardship like we are right now, if you believe the worse that you're not well off, the less you're going to approve of the government. Which is ironic, because you're going to vote out the people that are in there, and a lot of times that's going to result in divided government. So if you're not happy with the Democrats right now, then you might vote for a Republican the next time around, because you think the Republicans have the key to making you financially sound. Ironically, that's going to lead to divided government a lot of times, and nothing gets accomplished in divided government, which means your economic hardships aren't really being answered. But since the American people don't really understand what the heck happens, I don't really expect them to do anything more or less than create a conundrum for themselves. Okay, so that's public opinion, and we're going to incorporate discussion about a public opinion into voter behavior and turnout.